Hi, people. Today on Speak Your Brain, I'm with a really good friend, Xavier Brinkman. He is a MTV host and entertainment reporter, and he talks about some of his favorite celebrities and some of his least favorite celebrities. So check it out.
I remember
You do?
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago?
Yeah, when you were like packing boxes and doing all that.
Yeah, it was terrible. This time
And
it was much easier.
you've got the new spot in West Hollywood?
Yeah, and my move was so much smoother this time. I got movers.
Great.
4 amazing, beautiful Hispanic men came into my house and packed everything within 2 hours.
Great.
I was just chilling, watching
Love it.
YouTube videos.
Great. Are you living by yourself or with roomies?
You know, I have a roommate now because I've like always been alone.
Mm-hmm.
And like I wanted a roommate so bad because I just feel like I hold myself so much more accountable when there's someone around, and when I'm like just alone by myself at home, I just get lazy and I just want to like chill on the couch and like watch Netflix.
Right.
But when there's someone around, even if they're like in their room, I'm kind of like, someone's around. I need to like do something productive.
I'm being judged.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know what it is, but
I'm the opposite. It's like if I'm by myself, I'm like, all right, let's get it done. If there's someone around, I'm like, let's do shots.
Hang out.
Yeah, they're like, it's 10 a.m. on Monday.
That is
like,
so funny.
Good call.
So opposite.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I've always noticed that when there's people around, I do so much better everything.
Gotcha.
Like when I'm just by myself, I just turn into a piece of shit. I just no offense to myself.
Look how productive you are. You got a podcast and everything, killing it.
Yeah, and like with the roommate, I always because I'm like surrounded by models, but I just didn't really want a model roommate. I wanted a roommate who's either a doctor or a scientist.
Gotcha.
Like that was like a dream. And lucky bitch that I am, I got a psychiatrist roommate.
Great.
It's fucking awesome.
That's cool.
I know.
I love it. All right.
How about you? Who do you live with?
My girlfriend. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she's also a scientist. So she's she works at UCLA in neuroscience and human behavior research.
That's hot.
Yeah. So she's Canadian. It's like a bit of a unicorn. She's just like beautiful blonde Canadian, but she's a full academic, so has a master's in public health, and she's an epidemiologist. So like she's out there saving the world, and I interview like celebrities and TikTokers and stuff.
I love that though.
Balance. So I am constantly surrounded by academia as well. So
that's my type of girl too.
Yeah.
I like girls like that.
Yeah, she's good. She's a little smarty pants.
Oh, how long have you guys been going out for?
It'll be 2 years this month actually. Yeah. So we met. As I said, I've been in out. Is this the interview? Are we recording? Not yet.
Yeah, we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I've been here almost 10 years. She moved down about 2 years ago, literally this like October 2018. So she'd been here like a week, and then we like bumped into each other. We met like sort of like kind of a funny story, but like through mutual friends. And it's funny because she's, I make fun of her because she's always talking about how it sort of all just happened really quickly. And I'm like, yeah, man, like what are all these people talking about how hard it is to move to LA, right? Like, you just moved because she wanted to learn to surf, right? She'd done a little bit of surfing, and so she'd actually been married before. So she got divorced, was done with Canada, done with this little town she was in, and was like, you know what, fuck this. Like that surfing trip I did in where I learned to surf in Hawaii was amazing. She had a job offer in LA, and she's like, I'm fucking doing it. I'm gonna go. And she took a job as an epidemiologist in around this area actually. And so I make fun of her. I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know why people say it's so hard to move to LA. You just like move there, and then in that week you'll meet an Australian guy who will become your full-time surfing coach, and then just move into his apartment in Venice like 2 months later.
You guys moved in?
Yeah, like
right
straight away. Yeah. And,
what was that like?
Great. Like I was worried. Yeah, as I said, so I make fun of her for that because everyone else is like struggling. I was crying in the shower for my first 2 years in LA, right? I found it very difficult. I was a 22-year-old moron. She just swooped right in, had a great time, got a full-time surfing instructor, and moved into my place in Venice.
She can surf now?
Yeah, she's good, a little ripper.
How long did it take for her to learn?
She's still a surfer in training, as she likes to call herself, but yeah, it took about probably like 6 months before she sort of got comfortable, because she's from I grew up in Australia, so naturally, just to fulfill Australian stereotypes, we grew up like on the beach, and it's a very like swimming heavy, beach heavy sort of country, whereas Megs grew up in like landlocked Canada. So she just didn't grow up with the ocean. So a lot of it is just teaching her how waves work and all that. And so, yeah, but I mean, I give her like, she gets like star treatment. So I literally paddle out with her. I just sit there and I push her on waves and I tell her what to do. And sometimes when she gets tired of paddling, she'll just grab onto my foot and I'll just paddle for her because she's exhausted because she's got little noodle arms. And yeah, I mean, we love it. Like it's really cool because it's what I love. It's my passion. It's what I love doing, you know, in my spare time. And yeah, it's great to have someone who's just as keen to do it as I am, you know?
I tried surfing a couple of years ago when I was in NorCal, and the water up there is
Freezing,
really cold. And like me and my friend, shout out, Eileen is always down to do everything. We went surfing and we would like go in the morning and the water was so cold. We would have to take like a couple shots of whiskey, a couple shots of whiskey and like a couple beers, like just down it, go in the water. And we would take beer with us in the water.
Oh my God.
Drink it, and then we would like hold on to the cans to bring it back. It was very non-practical.
Good.
But I thought it would be easy to learn surfing because I know how to snowboard. So I was like, oh, pretty much the same thing. It's a board, you stand on it. I was not able to get up. I would just get on my knees. I couldn't like fully stand.
Yeah, it's completely different. People say that to me as well. They're like, bro, I think I'd be pretty good at surfing because like I like skated when I was young. I'm like, nope, like absolutely not. They're like, no, but like the balance. I'm like, bro, we're talking about the ocean here. Like,
yeah, it moves.
Yeah, at least with snowboarding, like you can pick up. I mean, in my opinion, like I picked up snowboarding in about 3 days because you know you can just go repetitively again and again and again, and the mountain doesn't move around.
But if you fall, it hurts much harder.
Oh yeah. It kills. You won't be able to sit down for a week, but you'll learn. You know, with surfing, it's just like, you know, you'll get one wave and you're like, yes, and then that will never happen again. You'll have to paddle somewhere else, and it's always just consistently changing. And you know, getting up isn't the hardest part. It's sort of positioning yourself and paddling and learning how to catch it is the hard part. You know, so yeah, it's a really tough sport to learn. Something
that's like terrifying for me with surfing is that like, okay, so like shark attacks, everyone's afraid. Like only surfers for the most part get shark attacks.
Yeah, I mean, true, but what is it? The statistic is that the average is about 11 people die from shark attacks per year.
Oh, you know, I thought it was much less actually. I thought there was one shark attack a year.
Well, I mean, in the world, the average is 11. People die from it. I mean, there's shark attacks. People dying from it I think last time I read was about 11. So you've got like, I don't know, you're 1 million times more likely to die on the drive there.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying I'm not scared of sharks. I would probably have a heart attack and die before the shark actually bit me, and then it'd be like, hey, I'm just a dolphin. Like you didn't have to die. My worst nightmare, but it's just like if it, you know, you just come to terms with it, you get used to it. It's just like, hey, if that's how I'm going to go out, then that's how I'm going out.
And I think averagely you don't die from shark attacks because sharks don't eat human. They just like take a bite and then they're like chewing and like, this is disgusting, and spit it out and they go away.
Yeah.
That's why like most shark attacks, like they lose like a limb, like an arm or a leg, and then
have a nibble. Yeah, I get. Yeah, they don't actually intentionally like to eat humans. It's more like they think you're a seal or something, which is ridiculous because it's like, oh, okay, they like seals, huh? Cool. Let's go put on black silky wetsuits and then go and just like hover around in the ocean. It doesn't really make.
I don't know where I heard this, but somebody said the reason sharks attack surfers so much is because when you're on your surfboard, the fin that's like the little thingy, what do you call that? Is it is a fin? Mm-hmm. That's like below your surfboard. It's because it's like moving so fast in the water. Sharks think that that's a fish.
Gotcha.
So they attack.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then
because it's going fast and it has a fin in the water, so they think it's a fish. They attack it and they take a bite and they're like, no, I don't like that.
Yep. It's pretty much just unfortunate that they have to take a bite to figure that out, you know?
So, but I mean, hey, if you've watched Lara Croft, you know what you're supposed to do. You look at them directly in the eye and you punch it and then you ride it to the surface. Yep.
Speaking of Lara Croft, you were kind of looking like Lara Croft in your Instagram videos the other day at the shooting range. How long have you been doing that for?
You know, it's just like it hasn't been that long. It's something that I'm like very recently picking up. And I freaking love it. I'm going to Miami tomorrow for 4 days just because like there's this range there that we really like to go. Me and a couple of my friends, we go we shoot there. So I have a Navy SEAL guy that's teaching me and a Marine Corps guy that's teaching me.
Wow, all right.
Yeah, and it's just, I know people are so confused by it and they're like, why are you like doing this like so seriously? Because I love it, and every time I go for like 3-4 hours of training. My hands just get absolutely destroyed after. My whole arm hurts. But it's I have 3 alter egos, and one of them is a ninja.
Great.
So I mean, I'm just fitting into the alter ego.
Love it. When did the alter egos become a thing?
Merge. I don't know. As I just got older, I figured that.
And wait, so you got a ninja. What are the other 2?
Oh, good question. So 3 alter egos. One of them is a scientist, which is why I go to school for psychology, and I read a lot about science and the brain because I want to like know about those things. One of them is a ninja. The other one's a stripper.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to pick up pole dancing pretty soon.
Great. That's a serious workout. Yeah. Yeah. When your hands recover from the shooting, you'll be able to do the pole dancing.
I picked up one pole dancing when I was like 18, and it was so hard.
They make it look easy.
It was so much harder than shooting guns. So much.
Yeah.
It's so difficult.
Yeah, that's why I haven't attempted it, but I've heard it's really hard.
It's humbling because you're trying to be sexy, but you just like keep getting shit. You just like keep like flopping on the floor, and you're like, it's not
that's
working.
it. I interviewed was it J-Lo for the film? The film Hustlers?
Hustler, yeah.
And like that's when I sort of like had to like research what like the work that goes into it. It's crazy, and like just let alone being able to do that, but actually making it look, sexy and smooth.
He's smooth. Yeah, I was watching that movie on a flight on an airplane, and there was this like 5-year-old girl sitting next to me with her mom, and she was just locked onto my screen.
Right, you're like, stop.
Like she was just watching it with me, and there were like parts of the show that I just like I didn't know what to do, so I just like looked at the mom. She was like kind of looking at me like, and I was like, I don't care if your daughter turns into a stripper.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
She got to learn sometime.
What will be, will be.
She was just watching it with me.
That's great.
I felt a little bad. But no, I got to watch it again because I couldn't really hear the conversations. I wanted to see the Cardi B part in it.
Yeah, she was good. She was
in
good.
it
Very
briefly.
authentic. Very authentic. Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
she did used to be a stripper, no?
Yep. And she has the career, everything about her is like this like hustler and all that. So she fit the role that she played in. I mean, it was like super small, but it was just like, she was kind of a territorial stripper there. So it's like, the main,
back off.
Yeah, the main character sort of doesn't know what she's doing, and she's starting work at this new club, and then she sort of, I don't know, I guess tries to approach some guys in Cardi B's area, and then Cardi B like grabs her by the back of the hair, and she's like, back off, bitch. Like, these are mine. And it's completely believable as well.
Yeah, she would be that kind of. She's been getting really into politics lately. It's kind of weird.
And it's funny because I mean, like she says some good stuff, but it's so funny, and like I guess like kind of difficult to take her seriously because her accent is so strong, and she's so like hood,
She's so hood.
Like she gets her point across, but it's in like the most thug way ever, and it's probably more effective.
I don't know, because I like kind of watched it, and I'm like, I can't take serious talk from someone that I can't take seriously. You got to be able to deliver your points. It's like, there's that girl, Candace Owens, is that her name? And she, like, I guess Cardi B was like going at her, like insulting her, and like she was getting back at her, and like the way Candace talks, she's like, I don't agree with everything that she says, but she's so educated and she's so calm and collected, and the way that she speaks is so beautiful. And the way that Cardi B talks is like, I love it when she is a singer and she's like this rapper, and like she's on the stage and she says funny stuff and it makes me laugh. But it's like, as soon as she starts talking about like politics, I'm like, I don't know if I can take that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I appreciate it. I respect the fact that she's trying to educate people, and she's using her platform. And obviously she's got the whole like huge portion of the Gen Z demographic like in the palm of her hand, like in it with her platform, so she's trying to use it in a productive way, but yeah, as I said, it's just, which is great, it's just, as I said, it's a tough one to swallow. It's like, it's difficult to palate like that kind of accent and that like hood rapper telling you about voting and who to vote for. So anyway, good.
I mean,
good on
hey,
her.
as long as you're inviting people to vote and have an opinion and like think for themselves and like seek out truth, then whatever your method is, maybe it sticks with some people.
That's it. I'm sure it's effective.
You see, this outfit is because I like had a meeting earlier. I have another meeting after this. I usually come here in a hoodie. This is like the first time I'm like wearing high heels and like full face of makeup.
Yeah. Nice. Good for you, girl. Living. Breaking quarantine.
how's your job been? So you have a pretty interesting job.
Yeah, I do. So it's well, yeah, I guess for those people who don't know, so yeah, I'm a producer and a entertainment reporter journalist. So I've lived in LA for just going on 10 years. So I moved here in 2011 when I was 22. I was just coming over for a 3-month internship at a punk record label called Epitaph Records in Silver Lake. So I just came over to to do that for 3 months, and then like one thing led to another. I just had a really good time. I really enjoyed the people I worked with, and I was actually just passing through. I was doing a trip, so a couple of buddies and myself ended up doing like a trip of a lifetime. So I bought a car for $1,100, and we ended up driving it to. So I did my 3-month internship. Then the other boys came over. We're like, cool, let's do this trip as planned. So we drove to New York, and then we actually ended up spending 6 months driving from New York to Argentina. So we drove through 10 countries, which is actually possible. Yeah, a lot of people sort of didn't realize that was true or possible, and I didn't either. But yeah, there's a little 1993 Ford Escort wagon that I bought for $1,100 off an old guy in Orange County. It just was like the little engine that could. We were like, let's see if we can get this thing to New York. That'll be hilarious. And then we got it all the way to New York, and then we drove all the way through the South and got to Texas. And we're like, man, like so the car was a Ford, so we named him Harrison Ford, and we got very attached to this car. We're like, dude, we can't leave Harrison here. Like, let's see if we can get him to Panama. And so we got over the border into Mexico, drove all the way through Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, then Panama. And then, we're like, we can't leave Harrison in Panama. We were even more attached to him, and he was a maniac. And so we ended up shipping him across the border from Panama to Colombia, and we sailed across, and then took us about 2 weeks to bribe all the officials to get him off a shipping container, because everything is I feel like we bribed every official in Central and South America. And then, got into Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Argentina.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it wasn't sort of until towards the end of that trip that, I started getting a few emails from people in LA and a few job prospects and stuff. And I was like, hell, like, all right. Like I'd always intended on just going back to Melbourne, and but I had to get back to LA to pick up a guitar and a few things that I'd left there. So I thought, hell, like if I can, I'll give it a month, and if I can get a job and a visa, I'll stay. And if not, like, no worries, I'll head back to Melbourne. And ended up getting a job, my first like label job, after about 3 weeks, and then started that, and then I started a band, and then I started hosting a music show, and then I got a girlfriend for a few years, and like, the next thing I knew, I was just here, and I was like, wow, it's been like a year, and then I'm like, wow, it's been 3 years, and then it was like 5 years, and now, I don't know. Now I've just spent I moved here when I was 22, and now I'm 30. I turned 32 in August, so it just like went really, really fast. Here we are.
Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, and then sorry to answer your question. That was a serious diversion. There, we went all the way to Argentina on that one.
Oh, good.
But yeah, so I spent the first few years working in record labels. So I was a full like music. All I wanted to do was work with bands and musicians and artists and all that. So I started working in music. I was looking after all of Interscope's clients. So like the next thing I knew, I was 23, and I'm working with like Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus and like Robin Thicke in like the Blurred Line days, and Carly Rae Jepsen when Call Me Maybe came out. Ridiculous. And
that song.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. So I was like in the thick of it, and I was working with Ellie Goulding and all this stuff, and it was great, but it was like life and death. Like it's like Ellie Goulding's going on stage, in Japan. So it's like I'd be getting up at 2 a.m. to like tweet for her and like make sure that like the band is there and all this sort of stuff. It was nuts. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then I was just like, man, I was also hosting a music show, and I'd studied journalism, right? So it's like I was always secretly really into doing this hosting thing, but I came from a really small town in out of Melbourne, about an hour out of Melbourne, like full small town. Like all of my friends were like tradesmen, like plumbers and bricklayers and stuff. And I played football back then, and it was just like not a thing. You wouldn't be like, hey, like I want to be an entertainment journalist and be on TV. Like that it just didn't process for people back there. So it's like I got very used to keeping that keeping that inside. And then it wasn't until I really got to LA and the reason I love Los Angeles so much is because how how much people just embrace anything. They're like, hey, that's what
Right.
you want to do? Fuck yeah, go and do it. Like,
Yeah.
I've got a friend that does that. You should do it. Like, straight away, it was like, oh, like, you want to be a host? Great. Like, there's this music show, and like, I think they need a host, and like, bang. And then
And
all
it
of
could
a
be
sudden,
the craziest thing
yeah,
ever.
you can
and
say
like,
whatever you want, and
yeah.
people are just like, fucking sick. Let's do it. You know, tomorrow there's a shoot. It starts at 6 a.m. You're on it.
Yeah.
And I really got into that. And then so after a couple of years in the label business, I was like, man, like, this is great, but like, I can do this. I've been doing it. It's like I'd been doing it for about 3 years. I'm like, I can sit at a desk and just rot for the rest of my life, but I haven't got that long where I'm sort of young and, enthusiastic and just sort of ready to get out there. So I'm like, look, I'm going to put this on pause. So I started doing like consulting for a record label from home, and then basically allowing me to go out and start doing interviews and everything. And so I just sort of went full force on the hosting thing. Literally exactly what we're doing right now is what I pretty much do for a full-time job. So I'm just interviewing all the people all the time. So at any stage in this interview where you feel like you're being interviewed, say, Zave, shut the fuck up, mate. You're the one being interviewed.
That's
all right?
so funny. I already felt that.
Yeah, me
I already
too.
felt that. Like I barely have people on that like they ask me questions,
Yeah.
and like you right off the bat, you were like asking me questions, and I was like, it's because he's an interviewer himself.
So, yeah, just hold up your hand and go, shut the fuck up. As I said, I'm just learning to be interviewed. Actually, it's like I've got to get better at it. But yeah, basically, so I went full force on it, and then I started I started working with MTV Australia, so I became their US correspondent, and then a couple of other TV shows saw me on TV with MTV, and they were like, hey man, like, can you just do what you do for them and do it for us? Because we've got all this, like, basically what was happening is networks were spending a lot of money sending like, your MTV host from Australia, they'd send them over for the weekend to do, the Thor red carpet or whatever, and then they'd be there for 24 hours or 36 hours. They'd be super jet lagged, they don't know what's going on, and then they get back on the flight and they fly back. And it was basically like, hey, like, you're Aussie, you're an entertainment reporter, like, hey, do you want to just, and I'm like, yeah. I live 5 minutes from Hollywood, I can do this whenever. And and really when I started working for MTV, sort of everything else picked up. Like really all people want is a name they recognize. So it's like, that's when I got like management and an agent and all this sort of stuff, because people just want to be able to say like, oh, he's an MTV host. Great. Like if MTV like fuck with this guy, then like, great, then we will as well. It's the most bizarre thing. It's like, as I said, people just want names they can relate to, buzzwords really.
Right.
So yeah, so basically I got a dream gig. I started just flying all around the world. Like all those interviews you would have seen in my show reel was just like, I'd get a call from MTV saying, hey man, do you think you can go to Hawaii next weekend to interview The Rock for the new Jumanji film? And I'm like, let me check my schedule. Yeah. And and so you'd be over, you get flown over there like first class. There'd be someone in a an SUV waiting to pick you up, and then you get taken to the Four Seasons, and you'll have like 3 or 4 days there. And basically the studios, they kind of kiss your ass. They really want the journalists to have a good time and enjoy themselves, because they want to get a positive review for the film. So the next thing I know, I was sort of like a film critic really. And and it was amazing.
That's
so
awesome.
it's like, so I'd be in Hawaii one weekend, and they're like, hey, we need you to go straight to London to interview Jason Statham for this new like action film, but after that we're gonna have to, you can go back for a week, but then we need you to go to Toronto. And I'm just loving it because I thoroughly enjoy it, and who wouldn't want to travel and all that sort of stuff.
And interview all the A-list celebrities, the best ones.
It was great. So it was funny because I thought I was getting picked up by MTV because I was sort of a music critic, like a music expert before that, so I played in a band, I worked in music, and I started like reviewing bands and doing all this sort of stuff. So I thought that was what I would be doing for MTV, but it literally wasn't. I got into MTV, like music television, and became a film critic, which was great because I was always like a bit of a movie buff, but like, I'd never had a platform to sort of express that. And so yeah, basically it was just a couple of years. So I started doing that for MTV and a few other TV shows, and it just was crazy. And then basically in 2018, I got brought on by this company that I still work for called Herdwell. And that was really when my background in sort of digital marketing and then the hosting world really sort of came together. And they were like, hey, we need basically like, look, we need an executive producer to come on and start this like podcast interview series, but we also need someone who has a background in music. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, like stop the search. I'm literally your man, I guess. And yeah, so I basically got brought on. I had to they were one of the owners of the company is an agent for CAA who manages all digital talent. So like all the biggest YouTubers, like probably now all the biggest TikTokers and all that sort of stuff. So they're like, hey man, like we have access to all the biggest like digital talent in the world, like the cream of the crop. We want you to come on and start a podcast, start an interview series. We want to become an outlet, and we want you to come on and create it, produce it. Like that's what you have access to. We don't know what the show is. We don't know where it will film. We don't have any idea about any of that. We need you just to come and do it. And I was like, wow, all right. So the thing I really found interesting with like the influencer space was, and this was, in 2018, I feel like it was before people really woke up to how much money influencers were making and YouTubers were making, and it was more of like a joke. Like everyone's
right.
oh, fucking hell, like another...
And then they were like, oh, they make $4 million?
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, wait, like this 18-year-old named James Charles shooting beauty videos in his parents' basement in Jersey is making $5 million a year? Like, what? So I started it, like, basically before all that happened, I started the series. So it was based on digital entrepreneurship. So basically, like, how these kids like went from just like making videos to turning their hobby into their job, and then like navigating Hollywood, navigating the business space, and basically learning how to monetize their content. So yeah, that was a series that I started, and then we just like worked our way up. So at first it was an audio podcast like this, but like in a way shitter studio. It wasn't even really a studio, and I was sound engineering it as I was hosting it as well. So I'd have a laptop open, I'd like wheel my little case. They're like, oh, where's like the crew? I'm like, nope, just me.
That's me.
I'd wheel this little thing, and I'd have Logic Pro open, I'd have my headphones on and their headphones, and like I'm trying to like adjust things like as I'm speaking, and it was crazy. And then basically we just sort of stepped up over the years. So I did a deal with W Hotels. So I was shooting out of their like recording studio. Not many people know that they actually have recording studios in their hotels, which is sick. And the idea is that like celebrities stay in the hotel and then they just have like crazy sessions there and stuff.
Does that actually happen?
I think so. Like they said like Kanye had like recorded there and a few big people like that, but who knows? Probably. And then basically we did another deal, and then we ended up, our last one we did with Fox, Fox's streaming platform called Caffeine. And so that's when we actually ended up ditching the audio format, because basically I was interviewing all these YouTubers, and all these YouTubers' fans are kids. They're not like listening to a podcast on their commute to work, they're watching YouTube videos. So it was like, yes, the podcasting industry is $1 billion industry, but it's just like, it's not for our demographic. These kids aren't listening to podcasts. They want to watch shit. They want it to be like 4 minutes long. You know what I mean? So we had to sort of adapt to that. And then, like, as I said, fast forward a couple of years later, I had a full studio at the Fox. We had a full crew and everything, and like multiple camera setup, and it was great. And then everything was going great, and then this little pandemic happened, right? And so in about March, Fox Studios closed their doors. They're just like, we're putting all production on hold. All the studios are shut. And then so our production deal went south with them.
Oh no.
And so lost all the funding for my department. So like I had to like have a full renegotiations with my job, and ended up staying on, but they're like, hey, we're gonna have to bump you down to part-time, and like we're gonna have to figure out how we can do these podcasts via like IG, like Instagram Live and virtually. So we switched to a full virtual setup, and and I mean it's been fine. Like I've been sort of doing that and consulting and doing a few other things, but yeah, I mean to sum it up, like it's the industry is definitely on its head right now in my world anyway.
So they're obviously not making the same money as before.
No, I mean, it was, like I said, we were getting paid by Caffeine. Like they were giving, a lump sum. And basically the deal was that like we were shooting in their studio. And so Caffeine is a new like streaming platform like Twitch. And so the deal was they paid us all like a lump sum of money. And what they get out of it is that I was bringing on these A-list influencers every week, right? And so they would get into the studio. They'd tweet out to their followers or put on Instagram story. They're like, hey, I'm going live with Xavier at Herdwell. Swipe up to watch the live feed. And so all these kids would go, oh my God, like James Charles or Tana Mojo is going to be on this. How do I do this? So they'd swipe up, they'd have to sign up to Caffeine, and then they'd be able to watch. So it's like Caffeine we're getting all these new users, you know, and that was sort of the that was kind of the deal, really. And then what we got out of it is that we had a an amazingly beautiful studio, and we're at Fox, and because obviously production, like, studios are expensive, it really adds up, and all that. So yeah, that was sort of the deal, and yeah, that went south, and things have kept moving forward. It's no problem, but when right now it's obviously you and we're in person, it's physical, we can do it, but it's like when you're in a corporate scale, it's like there sort of has to be like blanket rules, they're like, yes, there are some exceptions, but we don't have the bandwidth to deal with everything individually. We just have to put a blanket rule over this. Studios are shut, no more production, like, done. So yeah.
But I think out of all the things that have been taken into like the virtual world, I feel like this is probably the one that has more of a potential making like the most money, because like you still have those names that people want to watch, rather than like a few of my friends that own clubs, and what they're doing now, they're bringing their DJs like in a little room, and they're playing like virtual concerts, and like it's not great because nobody really wants to see that.
Sure.
But at least with something like that, when you're like, I watched your video with James Charles the other day, and it's like people were watching James Charles online anyways. Now they're just like, now you are just like maybe not in person with your guest, and it's just like it's taken from one platform into another. It's still, it's still virtually, it's still online. It's not something that used to be in person, and now you have to watch it on your phone.
Exactly. It's, I think people are getting a lot more used to it. And, the one benefit for like smaller outlets as well that are trying to grow, like when you're doing the Instagram live idea, basically like one real benefit for the outlet is that, you go live with a person and it's your followings and their followings combined, right? So it's like, that was one thing that the company that I work for was sort of like, damn, like, this is amazing. Like we're getting all this viewership, like, because it used to just be us. Like we would go live on this caffeine stream, or we'd put a YouTube video out, and it would be us, like our responsibility or our task to sort of get it out to the world. Whereas sort of when you're going live with someone on Instagram, it's kind of already done for you. You're sort of getting all of their fans is tuning in because it's popping up on their Instagram that, that James Charles is live, or whoever you're interviewing. So yeah, that was like one benefit. I was like, damn, this is actually really handy.
So you've obviously interviewed multiple celebrities. Who would you say has been your most favorite?
Good question. Yeah, I get asked that one a lot. I reckon probably Will Smith.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. He is just freaking awesome. Like I've interviewed him about like 2 or 3 times, and like I guess like one way that I sort of not judge people, but like you can get a good idea of a good feel of sort of what people are like in real life is when they don't change, when they're exactly the same off the camera as they are on the camera, and Will Smith is just a freaking maniac, and like the cameras are off, like no one's shooting or anything like that, and Will Smith it's just like a comedy routine, and the last time I interviewed him was in March. I went over to Miami for the Bad Boys 2 and release. And yeah, so I went in this room with him and Martin Lawrence, and like it was literally like a comedy sketch. One. Yeah, it was a comedy sketch going on. I sort of just sat there for a bit. And I'm like I didn't want to interrupt it. You know what I mean? It was so funny. And then you do the interview, and then the camera's shut off, and then he's exactly the same.
I love that.
Yeah, so I reckon like he was awesome. Tom Hanks was actually awesome.
I bet.
Yeah, he was great. He was like for someone who's been famous for like I don't know 40 years.
Right.
They can get quite naturally you'd expect people to get pretty jaded, or they get very used to it, like nothing you can say to someone like Tom Hanks would surprise him, or like, take him back or anything like that. So, what I liked about him was that, I wanted him like, mate, like, how's your day? I actually do. I used to feel really sorry for them, because what people don't realize is they probably knock out like 40 or 50 interviews a day, right?
Jesus.
Yeah. So it's like the way it works. I'll paint a little picture here. So like, when I was in Australia, and when I was a kid growing up, and I'd see like a news reporter on TV with like I don't know, Madonna or Meryl Streep, I used to be like, wow, they might, like, I don't know how they hooked that up. They must be like friends or something. Like what a cool reporter guy who just like knows this person and got this like exclusive interview. Absolutely not. It's like basically the studios organize it. So it's called a film junket. They'll organize it at a big hotel like the Four Seasons, Four Seasons is a big one in LA. And they basically rent out like sort of a whole floor of a hotel. And they have like a tea room sort of thing. So there'll be like a buffet and drinks and all that for like the reporters. And then there's they literally take all the furniture out of the probably about like 4 or 5 hotel rooms, and they have these like A and B cameras facing each other. So 2 chairs facing each other, and each actor will have their own room, right? And then depending on what city it is, so they'll fly in. So I'm in foreign press because even though I live in the US, I'm in foreign press because I'm Australian, so I'll be with like the Frenchies and like some Chinese crew and Canadian and all this sort of stuff. It's like the craziest mix. And there'll be it's like the same ones as well. So it's like we've all been flying together for the last like probably 5 years that I've been doing it. And there's probably like 25 or 30 of us, and they'll fly us all to sort of like Toronto or New York. And then you also have domestic press, so they have them on different days. So there'll be foreign press on one day. There might be, 40 or 50 of us maybe. And you all they stagger it out. You kind of get there at different times, but like they'll be like, okay, great. Xavier Brinkman with MTV. Cool. You're going to go to room 342 to interview The Rock. You've got The Rock first, and then Emily Blunt after that. And so you'll go to that room, and there'll be like 4 other reporters sitting out the front. It's really funny because you feel like you're like waiting out the front of the principal's office or something like that. And then you wait there, and everyone's got their cards there, and everyone's quiet, and you've all got to be quiet because it's all very serious because they're filming in each room. And then and you'll literally have like, usually the time you'll have is 4 minutes. So and then and sometimes you might get longer ones like 8, but for most outlets it'll be 4 minutes. So which is crazy, right? So basically, like, they'll go, okay, Xavier, you're up. And you're like, okay, shit. Trying to remember everything you're going to say. And you walk in there, and you've basically got like 4 minutes to go in there, like, like say hello, talk about the film, have a joke, get serious, and then wrap it all up.
Right.
It's like, it takes a while to get used to. And then you'll also have like what the deceptive thing is, that it looks like this really intimate space that's just you two.
Right.
Like you think it's sort of like what we're doing right now. So it's you two, like you and I, one other legend who's taking care of sound, and that's it. No. So there's about 14 people in the room.
Oh, sure.
So they've got like the whole crew, they've got their manager, they've got their publicist, they've got their 2 assistants, they've got their photographer. So it's like you're literally stepping through people. And they, as I said, they might have done 47 interviews before you. They've had 47 4-minute interviews. They've been asked all this shit over and over again. They're tired. It's like 4:30. So it's like the challenge is getting in there and like waking them up.
There's got to be someone who's pouring shots in between.
Exactly. So yeah, it's if you get lucky, you'll be in the morning when they're pretty like fresh and chipper, right. And then if you get unlucky, it'll be like quarter to 5 on day 2 of interviews. So they might be up to like interview 100. So generally, like, I'll walk in there like Steve Irwin, right? I turn the Australian accent all the way out. I'm like, fucking g'day, mate, how are you? Big handshake, and like they're just like, whoa. And also it's a benefit because I'm in foreign press. So most people on the same day as me, English isn't their first language, right? So it's like for them to have me to come in who's super loud, obnoxious, and I speak English and they can understand me, it kind of like, it does work in my favor a little bit that I can, wake them up. So that's how junkets work. I can't remember really what you asked me, but that's how they work.
Okay, so the question was, who have been like your most favorite celebrities? You said Tom Hanks and Will Smith.
Tom Hanks, Will Smith. Margot Robbie was super sweet.
Oh yeah.
She's freaking beautiful and lovely, like on and off the camera. She was great. Who else has been good? The Rock is great as well.
Right.
Yeah, he's The Rock, just like he is a very like nice dude, but I think he's actually more of a strategist than anything. I think he really just gets it, like he always makes a real effort. Like there's all these like full like fanboys in the press like lineup. So these are all entertainment like film critics, and they have like major man crushes on The Rock, right?
I mean, he has the most followers on Instagram.
Yeah,
out of everyone, the Rock has the most, and then I think after that, is like maybe one of the Kardashians or
something
Selena
like that. Yeah,
Gomez.
I know that. I was always surprised that Cristiano Ronaldo has one of the biggest as well.
Yeah, that's the So I think it goes The Rock, Ronaldo, and I think it's Selena Gomez.
Right.
and I think it's like Ariana Grande, and then it's like one of the Kardashians. I'm glad because I thought like the first one would be like Kim Kardashian.
Good. Yeah, so he's super nice, and like again, like he's definitely like really nice off the camera and really nice on the camera. Like I remember interviewing him, and I've interviewed him and Kevin Hart a few times because they do heaps of movies together. But like you'll notice
those two are so funny together.
Yeah, but you'll notice with it'll be like, okay, like cameras off, and The Rock is very still normal, exactly how he was, but it's Kevin Hart that almost like he kind of deflates. Like he goes like, you know, because he's like Mr. Funny Guy, he's like, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, you know, and cut, and you'll be like, right, thanks guys, and then you just see Kevin Hart like he like he's like he hunches his shoulders. It's like he like deflates, and he's just like, oh my God, it's over. And then it'll be like, okay, we're back on. And then his shoulders go back out, and then he's like Mr. Funny Guy again. Whereas, you know, and that's pretty, I mean, like.
Which is normal. It's like you can't be on like 24/7 unless you're like fucking like.
It is normal. And we all know that comedians are a little dark. You know, they've all got a little bit of a weird background. So look, not surprised. But again, yeah, The Rock is definitely like when he's not like when the camera's not on, he's messing around with the crew members, and he'll remember everyone's name, and he knows all the journalists, and he'll like tweet at them, and they lose their minds, and they go off and give movies like the best reviews, and all of those little 1% little bits of effort, like they combine into what he is. You know what I mean? So it's like people like directors love working with him, producers love working with him because he's got this real like no messing around, like we're gonna get the job done, like hardest worker in the room, and he brings everyone up with him, you know? So instead of like some motherfucker like Vin Diesel who's the opposite of that, and he will make the press like literally he kept us a whole day and a half late in Toronto one time just because he didn't feel like rocking up to the interview. So the studio had to rebook all of our hotels, all of our flights, because we had to wait until 4:00 the next day till he felt like doing it.
Right. There are the ones that like act like a celebrity.
Yeah.
And then there are ones that like act like a hard worker person.
Exactly. And that's definitely what sets The Rock apart. So it's like, yeah, that's, you can just so getting like a sort of a background sort of view on things, you can so see like why he's so loved and why he is where he is, you know? Yeah,
I can totally see that even with my podcast. Like we've had this, I've told Kyle, like I will like invite a bunch of people, and it's, you know, out of all the people that I invite, it's, you know, a lot of them have influence and followers, and it's always like a couple of the girls that are just always like, they have that attitude like, do you understand how many followers I have? Do you understand how busy I am? Do you understand how lucky you are that I'm like even responding to you? And then there are just always those chicks that like, still have the same amount of followers, but they're just like really humble and really like easy to talk to, and it's like, hey, do you want to come do this podcast or no?
Yeah, just
tell me no. But then there are the ones that are like exactly the same thing. They like act like a big deal, which is like, I get it, you are a big deal. I bet Vin Diesel is a big deal too, but it's like that vibe that you give people and how easy you make it to work with you that really like shows your personality out of, you know, off camera.
Exactly right. And to give a little bit more info on the Vin Diesel thing, he didn't want to do interviews. So we're on a set visit for XXX. So we're in Toronto, and the set was dressed up to look like Detroit. So obviously they film a lot of stuff in Toronto, and they just sort of like do set designs to make it look like other places. And we were waiting in the snow for out. It was all day, and basically they said, sorry guys, like Vin Diesel won't come and do the interview. Right, it was supposed to be about 1:00. They like, he doesn't want to break character. And everyone's like, what character? He kind of plays the same person in all of his films. We're like, yeah, sure. And then it got to like 8:00 or 9:00 at night, so we've been like, we're like exhausted, everyone's freezing, we're waiting, and then they came back, they're like, guys, like we're so sorry, but like Vin Diesel just left, said he didn't feel like doing the interview. We will book all, because we were all supposed to fly out that night, and they're like, we'll book you all new flights, we'll get you all new hotels, like we just beg you if you can stay till tomorrow, we will promise you that we'll get him. So yeah, like we all had to wait, and it was ridiculous, and like it messed up everyone's connecting flights and all that, just because, as I said, just because Vin Diesel didn't want to break character, or he just, and then after making everyone wait all day, he just couldn't be bothered doing it. So yeah.
Wait, so he didn't even do it?
He did it, yeah, he did it sort of halfway through the next day.
Oh, okay.
But it was, I mean, like just him going home, he probably cost the studio probably maybe 30 or 40 grand, and just like rebooking flights and hotels and everything. So yeah, it's crazy.
Who else has been an asshole?
That's probably the question I get the most, actually. Righto. So look, I'll preface this, and I absolutely will answer. I hate when people are like, I can't say. I'm like, I fucking will answer.
No, yeah.
The only thing I will preface it with is that, like, I have to remember is that you do catch people on off days. You know what I mean?
Right,
As I was saying before, you might catch, someone might have done 46 interviews before you get to them, and then you have this 4-minute window with them, and that's what you make your opinion of them for. And I realize I'm like, it's probably not fair. You probably can't do that, even though it is a lot more fun to jump to conclusions. But so having said that, and look, I'll say these guys they may have just been having bad days, but the worst three interviews I've had would be Jonah Hill, Miles Teller.
Who's that?
Funny, he's very well, like, it's funny, like, he's a very successful actor. No one knows who he is. You'd know his face though. He was in the movie like Whiplash. He was in the movie War Dogs with Jonah Hill. He was in Fantastic Four. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He was in that movie. It'll come to me up. You know what? I'll get my phone out really quick. You'll know.
And who's the third person?
James Franco.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. 3 guys.
Yeah. So, and I'll elaborate. So that dude, you know that guy? No, you know Miles Teller? Oh, all right, doesn't know him.
I guess he's just got one of those faces that you see in a movie and you're like, oh.
He does. So yeah, James Franco, I interviewed him for a film with Bryan Cranston. It was the Christmas movie. It was called Why Him? It was a couple of years ago. So thank God for Bryan Cranston. God bless him. Walter White, you fucking awesome legend.
Did you say Walter White?
Yeah, so Bryan Cranston, who plays Walter White in Breaking Bad.
Well, yeah, what was he like?
Great. So that's what I was saying.
Bet.
God bless. So it's like those two were together. So Bryan Cranston's just a legend, and he gives you he's so respectful, and he gives you the best answers, and he really thinks about everything. And James Franco didn't care much for this film. It was a very sort of slapstick throwaway Christmas film that obviously really didn't challenge his artistic prowess. Right. And so he was just he could not have been more disinterested. He was actually like looking off into the distance and just like just had a cup of coffee and was just looking away. And so I literally have to be like, James, so what do you think? And he'd be like, yeah, no, like just what Brian said, man. Yeah. I'm like, wow. And that was the end of it. And so for about a year, I was like, damn, James Franco was the biggest dick ever. And then I interviewed him again for a film called The Disaster Artist that he, it was a freaking awesome film. I interviewed him and Dave Franco together. And James was the lead character in that, and he directed it. So he was just like an absolute legend. He was like doing the voices, and he couldn't have been more into it. So I was like,
maybe it was just a matter of passion.
Maybe, yeah. I just think he was very disinterested in the film. So that's a pretty good example of just catching someone on a bad day. But Jonah Hill, I've had multiple run-ins in, and don't get me wrong, I love Jonah Hill as an actor. Like, I will be the first person to get in line. I think he's awesome. Yeah. But as a person, I've had a few run-ins with him, like a couple, like once in real life, just out, like years ago in Hollywood, and he was the biggest douchebag ever. Just very like, I don't know. I don't really feel like I probably shouldn't be saying all this, but here we are. Just seemed like a very insecure guy, and just was like very uncomfortable with
Maybe because he was on all those like really tough diets.
Maybe. I mean, this is years. This is sort of like
deprived.
This isn't about 2012, I think, so years ago. And then then I interviewed him and Miles Teller for a film called War Dogs in Miami, and they were just it was, I don't know, like if they were having a bad day, but they couldn't have been more rude. It was just like they just did not like another dude in the room. They were just like, who the fuck are you? Like, who is this guy? All this, and it was super uncomfortable. They were so bad that the TV show that I was doing it for didn't even air it. They're like, they were horrible. Horrible. They're like, Xav, you did a great job. You were obviously reaching as much as you can. They were atrocious. We're not even airing it. Like, fuck that. So yeah, so that would be the worst.
How about women? Who's been your least favorite woman?
Yeah, the only one I've got super icy vibes from a couple of times was Zoe Kravitz.
Who's that?
Lenny Kravitz's daughter. She's been in quite a lot. And this was like, Yeah, a couple times. She's just so disinterested, like an app, like just, a bit of a brat. Again, as I said, it could have just been a bad day, even though it happened a couple of times in a row.
I mean, if you're Lenny Kravitz's daughter.
Yeah, I know. But it was funny because now we're in COVID times. This is probably completely understandable, but basically like I went in there because usually like you'll greet each other, you'll go in, you'll shake their hand, say how you doing, and while you're getting mic'd up and stuff, you have it's a small talk. And I went to shake her hand, she was like, oh. Like, nope, I don't shake hands. Like,
was it because of COVID?
No, this is years ago.
Oh.
Like I said, it'd be normal now, but like pre-COVID, it was sort of like, nope, like I don't shake hands sort of thing.
But I want to see her now.
It wasn't, yeah, exactly right. It wasn't sort of like, I mean, that's completely understandable. It's just like the way she did it. I'm like, okay. And then, she just couldn't have wanted to be anywhere else.
Right.
Do
they don't get paid to do those interviews, or do they?
I mean, I'm glad you asked that. So I used to be really cool. I feel so sorry for them. I'm like, oh God, and that's actually what I was talking about with Tom Hanks. Like the reason I liked him so much is like, I would really feel for them, I'd be like, oh, like, I'd be like, Bud, like, how you doing? Like, I'm sure you've done this 30 or 40 times, like, and Tom Hanks was the first person. He was like, oh, poor me. Oh. I'm getting paid, like, I'm, getting paid hundreds of thousands, like millions of dollars to sit in this hotel room and like have coffee brought to me and talk about a film that I made that everyone is really interested in, poor me, like wow. And I'm like, absolutely, like,
good attitude.
Amen. And then after that, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm here to do my job. Like, you do your job. You're getting paid. Literally, I mean, they might get paid $1.8 million for the film, or in The Rock's case, $20 million for the film. And in the contracts are these junket days. It's usually 2 days. It'll be so they'll film the movie and then a year later it'll be coming out, and they've been booked for these 2 days like a year prior. So they'll fly out from wherever they are. They'll get put up in the most beautiful hotel. They have designers. They have everything. All they have to do is just talk about the film, schmooze a little bit, and they fly back off to keep working on a project they're on or go home or whatever. And that really clicked. And I was just like, man, like, I'm just here to do my job. I'm here to get the best interview that I can that's going to go on television in Australia. And what really matters is what I'm going to get, that is how well this interview is going to be received by an Australian audience, right? So I'm like, you know what? I don't care if you've answered this question 100 times.
Yeah.
Answer it again. Yeah, this is what you're here for.
So they are getting paid to do it.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
so for each interview, they get paid.
I mean, it's so it'd be it's worked into their contracts. So it's like, as I said, they might do they might sign it. The Rock will sign a $20 million contract to do.
But that's for the movie, though.
It's in the contract. It's all okay. It's an umbrella sort of thing. I'd assume. Look, don't quote me on that, but I mean, if you really boiled it down, he'd probably be getting paid $150,000 for the day, type of thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, suck it up.
Right.
It's like, yeah, that's my attitude now. I'm like, bro, you do your job. I'll do mine. I'm not going to feel sorry for you anymore. Mm-hmm. I've had to ask these questions over and over again. You can answer them over and over again. Like, but let's just both do our job.
The contract that they make the movie also comes that you have to do these interviews for this amount. Yeah. It's not that they make the movie for a certain amount and then for each interview they get paid more.
No. Because as I said, it's like they're like quick 4-minute little interviews. So yeah, there's like look, as I said, again, don't quote me, but I'd assume that there's press obligations that are worked into the contract. So it'd be like the film shoots from January 1st to September 15th, and then there will be a 3-week world tour of press that's going to be happening the following year. That's all worked into the contract.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And are those questions that you ask them, like they're already like previously like ready and they give it to you and you ask them, or do you come up with them yourself?
So that's my job as the journalist. So basically, like we go and see the film the night before. So it's pretty, that actually is really one cool thing about the job, is that you'll go in,
watch the movie.
Yeah, the movie might not be coming out for another month, but you'll get ushered into this private little screening, and they like, most of the time they're just like, hey, like you got turn your phone off or whatever. Like they have security guards, like they're like walking up and down the aisles.
Don't give it away.
Making sure people aren't filming and all that. But it's like as if you would. You're a journalist, like get it together. And sometimes, like for the Avengers films and stuff, they'll take your phone. At the start.
That's important.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking Disney here, and so basically you'll go and see the film the night before, and then I usually stay up really late because I'm like, oh my god, like as I said, it's all happening really quick. So like you're flying from New York, you get in at like 4:00 into whatever, JFK, and then you get like an Uber out, and then you'll have like 20 minutes to have a shower, and then you got to meet in the lobby, and then you go see the film, and then your first interview might be at like 9 a.m. So you've got to like quickly and I usually do a ton of research on the film and all that before, and you read all the production notes and everything you can, because you want to get as much information as you can so you can ask great questions. Like
right.
the ultimate payoff for a journalist in these situations is for the actor to go, damn, good question. Like that, like when someone says that, yes. You're just like, yes.
Kind of like in class too.
Yeah.
Because I'm like a student, and like every time I like ask a question, the professor's like, good question. I'm like, I know.
I'm killing it. Yeah. So exactly right.
So you come up with the questions yourself, which, I was reading about your personality type. So you're an ENFJ.
Apparently, yes.
Yeah, and so I was reading about your personality type. I just got this new book. It's called Neuroscience of Personality. So it really gets into like the more of like the brain activity of each personality type. And when I was reading about your personality type, I was like, this is the perfect personality type to be an interviewer and to be a host. Yeah, just because, for example, like I'm a debater. My personality type is that I'm a debater. So like a lot of times when people say that, naturally, I just want to like debate it a little bit. I don't want to be an asshole. It's just that I want to make the other person think about their answer a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then like imagine if I'm like interviewing Morgan Freeman and he says something and I'm like, but do you think that that's the right way to think about that? But your personality type is so much that it's so much about like social harmony and bringing people's like most inner values out of them. So it's a lot more agreeable, and it looks for like the good, positive, valuable things out of people. And it brings a lot of harmony to conversations, always like looking for results and conclusions. So I thought that part of your personality type was really perfect for your job, right?
I love it. Yeah. Okay. And, that makes sense. And that's bang on, honestly.
Right? Obviously, like what you're doing is really awesome. I bet like so many people would kill to do what you're doing. It's like you just hang out with celebrities and ask them questions, and like as you said, get to watch the movies like firsthand. What do you think has helped you so much to get to where you are?
Good question. Yeah. So I think like the one, you might get this as well. The one thing like that really kills me is like, I mean, not kills me, I laugh at. I get a lot of Aussies from back home be like, oh bro, like you live in LA, like you have this like crazy job. How lucky are you?
Yeah.
And like I've now I'm just like, I brush it off, but that used to kill me. I'm like, if you only fucking knew what I've been through, what I had to do to get to this point, like there is no luck involved whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like my hustle story, like is what defined me. As I said, I wasn't joking when I said I was crying in the shower for the first 2 years in LA. Like it was so
best
hard.
Place to cry.
Yeah, exactly, right? Fully clothed with a beer, whatever.
Hugging your knees.
Yeah, so I guess like, I'm trying to, before I go off on a tangent here, I'm trying to remember your question. What was the question? What do you think has been like the biggest? Sure. Yeah, I really think just persistence. Like I worked for free for a long time. Like I actually worked for free for MTV for the first year, just because they were like, it's funny, like I pitched them on the idea, like, so I was seeing, as I touched on before, I was seeing they were flying presenters over from Australia and doing all this crazy, like, just spending crazy amounts of money and all this. And I'm just like, hang on a second, like I'm just as good as these guys. Like, I live in Silver Lake, so I'm 7 minutes from Hollywood. I'm like, I can do all this. I don't need to fly all these people over. Like I can produce, I can do it. And so I was trying to work my way into MTV for ages, and I'm like, how can I get in there? And then I realized that I lived in Canada 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was like a musician on a snow mountain for 6 months while I was snowboarding, and I'm like, hang on a second. I worked with this girl in a bar who was now working at MTV, and I was like, Kate, like, I go, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you reckon could you direct me with the right person to speak to about, this idea that I had? And she's like, oh yeah, no worries. I'll connect you with the head of talent. And I was actually back in Australia in Melbourne for Christmas. I was visiting going home to visit my family. And I got an email back from this guy, and he was super nice. And I was like, hey bro, like, I wasn't though. I was completely lying, but I'm like, hey man, I'm in Sydney at the moment. If you want, I'm just up for a couple of days. If you want to grab a coffee. And he wrote back and he's like, yeah man, how about how about tomorrow at around noon? And it's about 11 a.m. And I was not only in Melbourne, but I was about 3 hours out of Melbourne at my family's holiday house. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to get on a flight and go to Sydney and act like I'm in the area.
Right.
And so I'm like, folks, like I've got to leave.
Shows up with a carry-on.
Yeah. I got this. I'm like, I got this interview with MTV, and like I got to leave. And they're like, what? Like go. Like great, that's awesome, you little like maniac. I'm like, yes. And so I like drove 3 hours to get back to my house, and then from my house I drove into Melbourne, and I got a 6 a.m. flight the next morning, and I literally went in, I dumped my bag. I had like a carry-on bag. I dumped at a friend's place, and then like casually rolled up to the MTV headquarters as though I was just in the area, you know.
That's awesome.
And got a coffee with this guy and like pitched him on the idea, and I was like, and he's like, yeah, he goes, look man, like we've kind of got a good system going. We get a lot of our content from MTV US anyway. I can't really see us like needing this, but like, you know, good to know. Good to know you exist, you know? I was like, all right, not thinking anything of it. I'm like, I don't really think that went that well, you know? And then about 2 weeks later, I had flown back into LA, and I checked my phone, and I had an email from him. He's like, hey bro, like, are you available to go to, we need you to go to Toronto. Yeah, it was actually that Vin Diesel set visit. We need you to go.
So your first one was the shitty one.
Yeah. Like, hey, we need you to go to Toronto. If you're up for it, do you want to go to Toronto and interview Ruby Rose and Vin Diesel for this new XXX film? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. And so I'm completely new to it and everything. And then I did that, and then they were like, hey, we need you to go to New York. And then I went to London to interview Sacha Baron Cohen, and
so it just immediately took off.
It just immediately happened. Yeah, like I mean, it was years before that happened.
Right. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Years of hard work, but then in that hard work, usually like you have the hard, and then slowly
that
like,
was
but the takeoff,
that was my pivotal moment. Sorry, I should have prefaced that. So basically, for about 4 years before that, I was hosting. I had never been paid for hosting. I just enjoyed it. I hosted and produced a music series called Balcony TV. So I hosted that for 5 years. I never made any money off it. I hosted for any sort of little outlet in LA that would have me. I was just hustling. You know what I mean? I was giving up I was working full time, giving up my full weekends. Like I was driving out and doing all these interviews, and just getting like a base, like a show reel race, like basically like a base of work that I could present and sort of like act like present in a way that I was very established. You know? Right. But
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. And I had to learn how to. That's when I started editing, because I had to learn how to edit show reels and all this stuff. Basically, just like putting together a 2.5 minutes of content that made me look a lot better than I was. And yeah, so as I said, it was about four or so years of doing that before MTV happened. And I completely fluked that too.
And you were doing that in America.
Yeah, so I was like I became MTV Australia's US correspondent.
Right. Do you think the fact that you are a good-looking guy and you have an Australian accent, do you think the Australian accent helped you?
Yeah, I mean, it helps. It does help in LA for sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely an icebreaker.
If it was in Australia, it would be a normal thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the best thing I could have done for my hosting career in Australia was leave Australia, which I never realized, because when I was in Australia, I'm up against ton of every other dude that looks and sounds exactly like I do.
Right. But here it's like
whereas
when
I'm in LA, like I had a unique pitch. It's like I can be your man on the ground in Los Angeles because I live here, and that was valuable for outlets and news programs in Australia. They're like, yeah, there's literally like two of you guys out there doing that. It's either like you or this other dude. Yeah, he's booked, so we'll take you.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because a few years ago, I was with a modeling community, and we would like travel. We were like in New York for like 3 weeks. And they would kind of like record a lot of things and like have models talk and like kind of like explain what's going on, like a little like host. Mm-hmm. And the girl that ended up doing the best, she had a British accent. And a lot of us, like, even though like she was beautiful, all of that, but the fact that like they would ask her to host most of the like videos. And so she started doing much better than everybody else. And it was because of her accent. I mean, obviously her hard work and her like beauty. You're not going to discredit her,
but it helped her stand out.
Yeah, but the fact that like we could like see it that slowly they would like give her so many more of the shows, and it was totally understandable because like we would watch that. We would watch like the little videos, and like she just sounded so much better. Yeah, right. And I would always think, damn, like being in America and having a cute accent like a British or an Australian accent, like I think if you're like in this, like when you have to talk, it just makes it sound so much better. It sounds so much more sophisticated.
It's funny too. Like people are like, well, man, like you've lived here for almost 10 years. You haven't lost your accent. It's still like super strong. And I'm like, yeah, I never really thought about it, but it's like, you know, I probably have like fought to hang on to it as well. I lived with an Australian for 7 years. So we would just be like fluent bogan Aussies together when we get home from work. So that helped. But yeah, like, I mean, I can't lie. Like it's nice to have a point of difference.
Yeah.
You know,
it's definitely much better.
With the other models you're talking about, were they all American and she was sort of the only? Okay,
yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It does help. I mean, in such a competitive little town we're in, you know, you've got to use what you have, and if it's your accent, then
and if it works in your favor,
if you got to speak like Steve Irwin, you got to speak like Steve Irwin, you know.
All right, thank you so much for coming. This was so much fun.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
I was literally just about to ask when we were going to start, so that was great. Very informal.
Yeah, super fun. All right, bye guys.
Cheers, guys. Great host.
That was so quick.
Move with the rhythm, shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. You've been working, but you're flirting with the weekend.